what if Ryan Day loses to Michigan again? That'd be the fourth in a row. Now, this is obviously the worst case scenario, and we'll kind of unpack this in two different facets. We'll go worst case scenario and then best case scenario as it pertains to Ohio State. And this would be a worst case kind of vibe in multiple ways because, again, fourth in a row to your rival. Doesn't matter if you're the Pop Warner team down the road. Doesn't matter if you're Ohio State. That's not a good thing. And especially in a place like Columbus, Ohio, that is unacceptable. You can go 11-1, but if that one is to Michigan, we're not cool with it. Actually, we're probably not cool with 11-1 to begin with, but that's just what you walk into when you are the head coach at Ohio State. To make matters worse, on paper, you're up. Like, you're the big dog in the conference. You're the big dog. You went and got Caleb Downs, who is the best player, arguably, defensively in college football. Without argument, the best player via the transfer portal. You got him. Went out and got a proven commodity at running back in Quinshon Judkins. 1,000-yard back in the SEC. You pair him with Travion Henderson. You bring back everyone and your mama on defense from last year's unit that was top 5 in the country, more or less. You went out and got better at quarterback. You could have kept your starter from last year's squad that went 11-1. You could have kept him. Instead, you say, you know what? We got to get better. We go out and get Will Howard, another proven commodity in college football from Kansas State. Had a lot of folks that wanted his services. I'm just going to say, he was not short of options when it came to the transfer portal, was Will Howard. So you have the fact that Ohio State is up on paper, but then on paper, on the other side of things, going back to this what if around Michigan, Michigan is down on paper. Now, I don't know if that's necessarily all the way true as we walk this thing out and actually have the games played, but if you were just taking it from a returning production standpoint, the team that won the national championship last year, a lot of those guys aren't there anymore. New head coach, first-time head coach, to be clear, not counting the games where he kind of celeb shot for Jim Harbaugh. New quarterback, who knows who that's going to be. It's not going to be J.J. McCarthy. I know that much. He's making a whole lot of money in the NFL right now. They're 128th in returning production, is Michigan, out of 134 teams. So at the very least, you have more experience. You, on paper, should have more talent. This should be the year you get it done. So if you don't get it done, it's like, all right. Hey, like what else do we need to do if we're Ohio State? What else are we supposed to do here? If we can't beat Michigan with arguably the best roster in college football and our coach who is matched up against a first-time head coach, first-year head coach, what are we doing here? And so I've said this many times, but I feel like we got to revisit this. You would be outside of your mind box if you think that firing Ryan Day is the right answer here. Couple of reasons for that. He is 56-8 as a head coach. He has won north of 87% of his games. 87%. That is unheard of. That is ridiculous. Now, the reality is you can't lose 3 to Michigan. You know, and 8 of his losses, 3 of those to the wrong team. But it's worth noting now that Ryan Day has not just trotted out the same kind of team every single year when it comes to what he's done at Ohio State. Like, he has adapted and shifted his philosophy and shifted his roster. He's passing off play calling this year to Chip Kelly. Like, he is working to make this a better product. And this is not a situation where I want to pass out strays to other staffs, but like USC, it took a couple of seasons in wasting a Heisman Trophy winner, more or less. I hate to say wasting, but not maximizing a Heisman Trophy winner to make a switch on your defensive staff. Ryan Day, it took like one game. Like, the Oregon game doesn't go the way that he wants it to. He says, boom, we're switching things midseason. We got to roll here. That offseason, they go out and hire Jim Knowles. So give him credit for how he's adapted. And it's worth noting now, too, I think he's not done adapting. Like, this is his first job as a head coach. There was no, hey, figure it out at a G5 school. Hey, figure it out at an FCS school. Hey, maybe a lower-level power conference school. Be a head coach and then maybe get that big job at Ohio State. It was like, Urban Meyer, pass the 6 to Ryan Day. You're the head coach now. Bright lights, big city, let's roll. Like, that was, I think, the impossible situation he got thrown into in some ways. Yes, you have a great roster, but to have the expectations as high as they are and to be a first-time head coach, like, that is difficult to walk into. It's very, very difficult. So what I'm trying to say here is Ryan Day, as a head coach, the way he's continued to evolve and his roster has continued to evolve, we'd be foolish to think that he is a finished product as a head coach. So going back to my point here, you lose to Michigan a 4th time, worst case scenario in a lot of ways, but if you fire Ryan Day, you are outside of your gourd. it's worth noting now. Ryan Day and Ohio State, let's say they go 11-1. This what if becomes a reality. Lose to Michigan. They're still in the playoff. They're still in the, I don't know if they're winning the Big Ten with that kind of situation because of how difficult the Big Ten has been in the last couple of seasons. But let's just say they, for whatever reason, don't make the Big Ten championship, but they make the playoff. They go on a run. They win the national championship. There's still some unhappiness around Michigan in that game, but I think there would be a lot of folks in Columbus that are like, all right, we hate one part of this, but that national title trophy does look pretty good in Columbus. So that's one reality now. I don't think you need to totally just write the end of the story here if they lose to Michigan for the fourth year in a row. But here's my question. As much as people talk about Ohio State and firing Ryan Day, if it happens with Michigan, again, we think that's crazy. Andy Staples brought up a really good point when we had a conversation, I guess it was last Thursday, around Ohio State and the urgency to win this season. At what point is this a mutual breakup? Like, at what point, if you're Ryan Day, I understand Ohio State is the best job in a lot of ways, can be one of the best jobs in college football from a brand level, now from a resource level with what they're doing with NIL. At what point, if you're Ryan Day, do you just say, you know what? I win 87% of my games. I go 11-1, and I'm still like not doing the job that y'all want me to do here. I'm still not measuring up. I'm still getting heckled and having all this social media bullets aimed my way. Like, at what point are we just like, you know what? I'm a really good head coach. I know that. I've proven that. I'm going to go win somewhere else. I'm not calling my shot here, but Andy Staples, I think, had a really good point in saying, like, at what point is there just hey, this isn't good for anybody. Nobody's getting fired here, but we're just like, we're going to part ways mutually. It's not you, it's me kind of thing. I wonder how far off we'd be if that situation were to arise. So that's kind of the doom and gloom. If you're an Ohio State fan, you sat tight there for the better part of the last few minutes. That is then the quote-unquote worst-case scenario, in my mind. If they have an early exit from the college football playoff, and if they lose to Michigan, like, yeah, things get uncomfortable quick. But Bobby brings the juice with his what if, and he says, well, what if Will Howard is the missing piece? Hey now, Will Howard's the missing piece for you in Columbus. That tune changes very quickly around Ryan Day, which we'll talk about here a little bit. But the reality is for Ohio State fans, and Michigan fans won't want to hear this, and I don't blame y'all because y'all won that game fair and square. And I mean, I've been very vocal about how I feel about Michigan from what they did last year. They earned every single piece of that national championship. But Ohio State was like A- quarterback play away from beating Michigan and from being a college football playoff team. What happens after that, who knows? But Kyle McCord, he wasn't bad last year. He was 24 touchdowns, 6 picks. I believe he had a top 20 quarterback rating, over 3,000 yards. Like, that's good at a lot of places. It was the timing of the games where he wasn't great. The Michigan game is a perfect example. 18 for 30, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, one of those being on the final drive where Ohio State has a chance to go finish the deal against Michigan. They don't get it done. It's the timing of things. If you get A- quarterback play in that game against Michigan, that timing is correct. It's a totally different script around Ryan Day in this Michigan game. So going back to this what if Will Howard is the missing piece, at face value, it means that Ohio State probably is winning the Big Ten, and they're probably playing for, if not winning a national championship. But the reason why that would be the case is because it would mean that he has a skill set that is able to maximize the rest of the roster. Because Will Howard, he's got a lot of shade being thrown his way. There's a lot of disrespect on his name right now. But, like, if they go out and he is dubbed the missing piece, it means he was a good enough passer to unlock that top wide receiver in America. It means he was a weapon with his legs on the ground and changed the way that you scheme up third and short, changed the way that you have to defend that two-headed monster in the backfield with Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson. It means that he was able to elevate this roster to their potential. And I think the verbiage there is important, the missing piece. Because missing piece implies that that's the only piece that needs to be added into this equation to make it all go. So that means the defense also played to their standard they had a season ago. It means this receiver room plays to their standard. And it also means that Ohio State, excuse me, Ohio State is playing complementary football if that ends up being the case. Because last year, like, let's call a spade a spade. I'm very much a Kyle McCord stan in terms of what I hope he does at Syracuse. I hope he lights the ACC on fire. But listen, Ohio State, it was a defensive-led operation last year. It was. Even in the games they won, Notre Dame. Kyle McCord made some throws now to win that football game, but like the defense is essentially what kept him in it. The game against Penn State, we were there in person, saw the second half or the fourth quarter rather of that game on the sideline. The defense shut it down. Now, Penn State had their own issues offensively, but the defense gave the offense enough time to get it going, to dial it up to Marvin Harrison Jr., and that was how they ended up winning that day. So complementary football would be played to make a deep run in the playoff where you're able to beat teams in shootouts, you're able to beat teams in rock fights, you're able to maximize all that you have on that defense because of your offense, and then your offense is able to separate because of your defense. That's kind of the bottom line here if you're an Ohio State fan. It also needs to be said now, if Kyle McCord goes to Syracuse, if Will Howard, rather, comes in and is the missing piece, Kyle McCord being more or less, from what I understand, told by Ryan Day, hey, we can't guarantee you your job back next year. How smart does Ryan Day look for moving off Kyle McCord in that situation? Not because of Kyle McCord, but more so because of what Will Howard brings to the table. Because there is, I think, a lot of reason that can be made about why Kyle McCord should have stayed at Ohio State, or why Ryan Day says, hey, maybe we do keep the guy who knows our offense, knows the system, knows the locker room, waited his turn. It was 1 year, maybe he gets better the next year. Like there was none of that from what I understand by nature of Kyle McCord now being at Syracuse. So Ryan Day should be applauded for being willing to make the hard move of moving off his quarterback and then bringing in a guy like a Will Howard. And here's the thing I want us to really hone in on here as we kind of wrap up this part of this segment. If Ryan Day ends up leading Ohio State to a Big Ten championship, a win over Michigan, playing for a national championship, in large part, obviously, because of him bringing in Will Howard and what he did via the portal, bringing in some other guys. Make sure we keep that same energy around Ryan Day. Make sure we understand as much blame as he is getting around Ohio State's shortcomings, and a lot of people want to forget that maybe they were just a field goal away, a few feet away as the clock struck midnight on 2022, moving to 2023. They could have been national champions if that kick goes differently. But since then, he has just taken bullet after bullet for Ohio State. He's been the problem. He's been the issue. He's had, a million things thrown his way about what he has done at Ohio State. I'm not telling you some of that isn't deserved. Some of it you earned. Some of it I think is a little bit overkill. But if they go out and accomplish what I'm telling you they could accomplish this season, make sure he gets as much credit as he was getting blame. Because to stand in the eye of the storm there and to go retool the roster, to come back for seconds, in this case, I guess it would be fourths or thirds, whatever you want to call it, give Ryan Day his flowers. Because that's a tough freaking job to stand in there in the biggest brand, arguably, in college football when things aren't going well and people are talking about what you haven't done since taking over that team from Urban Meyer. The willingness to adapt and the vigilance to keep it pushing and to not get overwhelmed and to keep a steady hand. If they accomplish what they can accomplish in 2024, make sure Ryan Day gets some credit. So there's worst case scenarios and there's best case scenarios, but as we say a lot on this show, man, the beautiful thing about college football, the field, that 100-yard situation we got on Saturdays, 53.3 in width, always tells the truth. They'll tell us the truth this coming season around Ohio State. Hey, y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.